Hello, students, and welcome to episode 82 of our online lessons. Today, we are going to talk about a part of American history that is maybe even older than you guys watching today. And I want to start with showing you a picture of someone very special. This it's going to be it's a little too. Oh, there we go. This picture is my great-grandmother, and the woman on the end is my grandmother, Grandma Sharp. In the middle is great-grandma Palmer, and this big guy is me in university before I came to Japan. And the reason why I want to show you this picture is I want to talk about my great-grandmother. Because she is what inspired today's topic. My great-grandmother was born in Kansas, which is in the middle of America, and she moved to California after the Great Depression and after the Dust Bowl, which is what we're going to talk about today. So my great-grandmother and her husband moved to California for more work and job opportunities and to make a better life for her children and things like that. And so then my grandmother was born, and she had two kids, which is my mom is one of them, and my uncle. And then my mom eventually grew up and had three kids, which one was me in California. And it all started because great-grandma Palmer moved from Kansas to California. And I want to talk about that in today's class. We're going to talk about something called the Great Dust Bowl Migration. And just a second, I just want to... There we go. The Great Dust Bowl Migration and that happened in the 1930s, okay? So that's going to be today's topic, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get started. The title of today's lesson is called The Journey West: Hope and Survival During the Great Depression. The Great Depression was one of the most difficult periods in American history. It began after the stock market crash of 1929 and lasted throughout much of the 1930s. During these years, banks failed, businesses closed, and millions of people lost their jobs. Families who had once lived comfortably suddenly struggled to buy food, pay rent, or keep their farms. For many Americans, especially those living in the central United States, the economic crisis was made even worse by a natural disaster known as the Dust Bowl. Severe droughts and poor farming practices caused the soil to become dry and loose. Strong winds lifted the soil into the air, creating enormous dust storms that darkened the sky. Crops failed, animals died, and many farming families could no longer make a living from their land. As conditions grew worse, thousands of families began to look westward for hope. California became a symbol of opportunity. Newspapers, advertisements, and stories from travelers described fertile land, fertile farmland, and the possibility of steady work. Many people believed that if they could reach California, they would be able to support their families and build a better future. The decision to leave home was not easy. Families often sold many of their possessions to raise money for the journey. They packed their belongings into old cars and trucks, bringing only the items they considered essential. Some families traveled hundreds or even thousands of kilometers across the country. One of the most famous routes was Route 66 or Route 66, a highway stretching from the Midwest to California. It became known as the Mother Road because it carried so many migrants westward. Along the way, travelers faced countless hardships. Because money was so scarce, families could not afford to stay at inns or motels. They could also not afford to stop at restaurants for food. Families often slept beside the road or in temporary camps. Some arrived in California with only a few dollars remaining. A famous story from this period is that of Florence Owens Thompson, a migrant mother whose photograph became one of the most recognizable images of the Great Depression. In 1936, a photographer named Dorothea Lange visited a migrant workers' camp in California. There, she met Thompson and her children. Lange took a photograph showing Thompson sitting down with a worried expression, while her children leaned against her shoulders. The image became known as Migrant Mother. It was published in newspapers across the United States and quickly came to represent the struggles of countless families during the Depression. What makes Thompson's story so remarkable is her determination. Despite poverty, uncertainty, and the responsibility of caring for several children, she continued moving forward. Years later, she explained that her family survived through hard work and perseverance. The photograph, as well as Thompson's story, showed a more personal view of the tragedy of the Great Depression and Dust Bowl migration. When many migrants finally reached California, they discovered that reality was much more complicated than what they had imagined. Jobs existed, but there were far more workers than available positions. Thousands of newcomers competed for the same opportunities. Wages were often very low because employers knew that desperate workers would accept almost any job. Many migrants found seasonal work in agriculture. They picked oranges, grapes, peaches, cotton, and other crops. The work was physically demanding and often required long hours under the hot sun. Families moved from one farm to another as different crops became ready for harvest. Because the work was seasonal, income was often uncertain. Housing was another challenge. Some families lived in tents, makeshift shelters, or crowded camps. Conditions could be uncomfortable, especially during bad weather. Yet, despite these difficulties, many migrants formed strong communities. Neighbors shared food, tools, and information about available jobs. These acts of cooperation helped many families endure difficult times. The experiences of these migrants became an important part of American culture. Writers, photographers, and musicians documented their stories. One famous example is the novel The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which described a fictional family's journey from Oklahoma to California. Although the characters were fictional, their experiences reflected the real struggles faced by many migrant families. Over time, economic conditions improved, and many migrant families eventually established new lives in the West. Some purchased homes, started businesses, or saw their children attend college. Their journey was not easy, but their resilience helped shape future generations. Today, the Dust Bowl migrants are a symbol of perseverance. They show us a people who are not willing to give up or wait for salvation. It shows us people who fought hard, suffered long, and found survival through their own hard work. They saw economic disaster in the 1920s, which made them lose their faith in banks and financial institutions. Then, in the 1930s, they saw agricultural collapse due to poor farming conditions. It seemed to them that their whole world was ending. But through courage, determination, and mutual support, they overcame enormous obstacles and left a lasting legacy in American history. All right. Thank you guys for listening. And again, my grandma Palmer, my great grandma Palmer, I don't think she was a Dust Bowl migrant because she came to California from Kansas a little bit later on, not in the 1930s. I think it was late 1940s, so a decade later. When the economy started becoming better and the job opportunities in California were more reliable, more realistic. And so my great-grandfather and great-grandmother moved to California. My great-grandfather got a job as a crane operator. He was working those big cranes that help build buildings and bridges and things like that. And I remember a story that he told me about him helping build one of the really, really important bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area. Not the Golden Gate Bridge, but there's another bridge called the Bay Bridge, and he helped build the Bay Bridge. He was very, very proud of that job. And my great-grandmother, she got a job at a baby food company called Gerber Baby Food. And she worked there for many, many years. And they could get a good salary and make a good life for my grandmother. And then, as a result, make a good life for my mother as well. All right, let's take a look at our vocabulary today. So we have 5 vocab words. Let's look at them one by one. Number 1 is drought. Drought. This is a long period with very little or no rain. Number 2 is essential. This is something that is extremely important or necessary. Number 3 is scarce. Scarce is something difficult to find because there is not much available. So like work was scarce or something like that. Number 4 is perseverance. Perseverance. This means to continue to work towards a goal despite difficulties. So it kind of means never giving up. When you never give up on something, you persevere. And number 5 is resilience. Resilience. This is the ability to recover from difficulties and become strong again. All right. We're going to do our discussion questions. And then that'll be the end of today's video. So let's look at discussion question number 1. It says, what are some similar events in your country's history that remind you of the Great Depression or the Dust Bowl? So can you think of any similarities or similar historical events where life became very difficult for the people in that society, or there was some kind of natural phenomenon that created a very tough life for people? Or even did people migrate somewhere because of these difficulties? So please tell me about that. Number 2, if you could only bring a few possessions from your home, what would you bring and why? So remember, the people left behind their house and their farms and many things to go to California. They only brought their most essential possessions, the things that meant the most to them. So if you could do the same, what possessions would you bring? All right, number 3 says, tell us about an experience where your local community helped you with something. So tell us about your community helping or supporting you. Okay, number 4. What important events were happening in your country in the 1920s and 1930s? So these were the big events in the 20s and 30s in America. How about in your country? What were some of these major events happening in the 20s and 30s? And number 5, what events are happening today that you think require a lot of perseverance? What are some events that you think require a lot of perseverance? Okay, you guys, thank you so much for watching my video today, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about American history in the 1920s and 30s. If you want to talk more about it, the Great Depression, the stock market crash of 1929 is super interesting. I can do a whole video about that. I was researching it today, and it's really, really interesting what happened. Yeah, anyway. Please look into it and continue your research about American history and culture. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.